I'm happy to talk about Sage. It really has been a life changer for us.
Our team, we're a bunch of finance nerds. We get really excited. New York City.
The James Beard Foundation was formed in 1985 after the passing of James Beard, who was known as the Dean of American Cookery in his day. And his focus was really on the culture of American food. After his passing, the James Beard Foundation continues his work. Over the last 5 years, we've grown significantly. More events, more programs, more sponsorships that we are engaging, and there was a lot of manual work being done. Being able to look at your actual versus budget was something that QuickBooks did not enable us to do. It was inefficient, it was cumbersome. We were like a dinosaur working in the modern world.
What I like about Sage is the flexibility. The canned reports that are already in place, you can build upon them, you can customize them, and that makes it really easy for us to build department-specific reports so that our VPs can actually look at the information in the way that's meaningful for them. We've gone through now 2 audits with Sage as our platform, and they've been really, really smooth. As an event is finished, we know now if X amount of people come at this rate, this is the staffing model that we need to now prepare for. It makes it so much easier for budgeting. Everything is at our fingertips, and the output is that everybody truly understands how the business is running.
The time that is saved enabled me to improve the quality of my work, the effectiveness of my work, and therefore I can then have a little time to unwind.
Thank you, Eva. Thanks, everybody, for being here. It's always a pleasure to be in front of you once again this year. Thanks for giving me your time. I know that you've got a lot to do while you're here, and I really appreciate that you're going to listen to me talk about technology. I was reflecting on Steve's keynote yesterday and some of the reactions to the things he said, and when he said that we want to eliminate the close, it got an amazing reaction from the crowd. Now, I went back to 2017 when I first told this audience that we want to eliminate the close, and the reaction at the time was a little different. It was crickets. There was some squirming in chairs. That message wasn't quite timed yet for an audience that was receptive to it. So I wanted to do something fun this year to talk about the close, to open up the keynote. Now, I work with some really smart people. There's a woman on my team. Her name is Sophia. She just joined my team from the security organization. And I said to Sophia, let's find something fun to open the keynote with about the close. And she goes away for a couple days. She comes back. We get on a call. She's really downtrodden. She says to me, I'm sorry, Aaron. I simply can't find anything fun about the close. And so I decided to do some research to find out how long have we not been having fun with the close. So I've gone back in history. I found a textbook from 1900. This is the first textbook, I think, that talks about the trial balance potentially not balancing. I love that it's called a trial balance. The name implies that it probably won't balance the first time. So it's called out here what you do when that happens. Going back another 50 years, this is a great textbook on accounting. For some reason, there's 4 books on single ledger, 6 books on double ledger, and 1 book on steamboat accounting. This is the first textbook, I think, that refers to having to sign the ledger in red ink, which is pretty traumatic. All right, so the real answer is you got to go all the way back to Petroli in 1494. Many of you know that Petroli is my spirit guide. I really love to rely on the ancient Latin text that he penned about double entry accounting. So you kind of have to trust me on this one, that there's some Latin text here that talks about the monthly close. Okay, just trust me that that's what it's talking about. But if you fast forward 530 years since we started talking about the monthly close, we've just completed our annual Close the Books audit. We talked to 1,000 finance leaders. And the answer from those leaders is, once again, we spend about 25% of our time in the accounting team working on the close. And that's time that could be spent doing really valuable things that are much more enjoyable than the close. And we all know the reason why we're spending 25% of the time. There's too much manual data entry. We're still having to reconcile discrepancies between systems. We're having to chase employees to get things submitted, reviewed, or approved. And while we're dealing with that trauma, The standards are evolving, and the personal implications for getting it wrong are increasing. And so it's not just about that 25% of time that we're losing. If we can get that time back and apply it to more important things, what's the result for the businesses that we work in? So I found out a few months ago that one of my favorite research organizations, a company called CB Insights, became an Intacct customer. And I'm always thrilled with a business, when a business that I use and that I love starts to use Intacct. So I dug in to see what was happening with them, and I found some really extraordinary things about what happened after they implemented Intacct. Just quickly here, when did I fall in love with CB Insights? When I got their first newsletter, and it was signed by the founder, I love you. That is the greatest marketing gimmick of all time, I think. So I talked to their controller, a guy named Jonathan Burke, and what he told me was that prior to implementing Intacct, it was a 60-day close. It was a soft close because they couldn't actually ever close revenue. They honestly did not know what their cash position was going to be. They couldn't really make decisions. But after the implementation, they got that 60-day soft close down to a 3-day hard close. And they spent all of that time working on cash. And so what were they able to do? They got their DSO down 10 days. That's a lot of cash that they were able to bring back into the business. With that focus on cash, they were able to create a cash forecast going out 13 weeks that they actually had confidence in. And ultimately, that's the answer that Jonathan told me, is it led to confidence in the business that they could make these decisions. And so when you talk about creating strategic impact, the result of this is they had the cash and they had the confidence to launch a new product. So any of you who are CB Insights customers out there, Yardstick exists because they got the close down from 60 days to 3 days. So we've got loads and loads and loads of customer stories. We've got an archive of them, and I decided, well, let's go through the archive and see if we can find any other stories about the strategic impact of getting the close down. Well, the answer is that that's what they all say. Every single user story, customer story that I went through, almost 100%, they all talk about getting the close down and what the implication has been to their business. We've got aircraft operators. We've got, what else do we have here? We've got Olympic organizations. We've got dentists. I think we've got some utility companies. We've got chiropractors and the YMCA. We went through a period of time where we put bad puns into the customer stories. I love this. Sage Intacct, the backbone of the back office for a chiropractor. Good one. So all of these talk about getting the close down to 3 days, 6 days, whatever. None of them say getting rid of the close. And so Steve showed you yesterday what our plan to do that is. We're going to put all of our investment into converting the work of accountants into this continuous activities of continuous accounting, where we're capturing all data in real time, accounting for it in real time. Continuous assurance, where we're pairing that real-time data with real-time confidence. And now, having solved those two problems and freeing up your team and giving them real-time confident data, continuous insights, where they can make faster, smarter decisions. And we're making two big technology bets to accomplish this. And they're no secret to this audience. AI, to drive all the automation that we need to drive that close down to 0 and then get rid of it. And the Sage Network, which is our way of connecting all of our customers across their ecosystems and to the AI services that are going to drive that automation. So I've got to do a little master class briefly here on AI, because it's going to be kind of important to understand the rest of the presentation. So we often talk about ML in AI ML, and we sort of throw these words around interchangeably, and we never really talk about what they mean. So I want to just briefly tell you what the ML means in AI ML. So it stands for machine learning, and machine learning essentially is the process of building AI. So a model, an ML model, is essentially a digital brain that's trained on data and then makes predictions based on what it's trained on. Data scientists are the people who design those brains. They determine what data they need to train those brains to make the most accurate predictions. And then our AI engineers get involved, and they build the systems around the machine learning to enable the continuous training, the operation, the deployment. And humans are a really important part of the cycle, because once we've deployed those ML models, humans are making those predictions. They're adding more data to the training data set, and they're telling us when the predictions are wrong, or they're filling in gaps when we can't make a prediction. And so all that feeds back into making the machine learning models more accurate. So keep that in your minds, because I'm going to refer back to this quite a bit through the rest of the presentation. So we've got to break down this continuous accounting into three areas, right? So when we talk about capturing data and accounting for it, there's three areas of focus for us. There's capture, that's automating data entry, essentially. Account, where we're helping you to code the transactions for compliance, for statutory reporting, for financial reporting. And allocate, where we're helping you to use that data for management reporting. So I want to give you a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at how we build AI, why we build AI the way we do to solve some of these problems, starting with accounts payable automation. So when we first started on this a few years ago, I really challenged the AI team, why are we not using something off the shelf? It can't possibly be that we can build this better than the AWSs of the world or the Microsofts of the world. And the answer they gave me was pretty straightforward. I should have known this. It's that those aren't designed for accounting workflows. It's not only that they're not accurate enough for what we need for accounting, it's also that they're not getting a lot of the information that we need for accounting. They don't understand the context around the data on the invoice, so they often don't know what to do with it. So we do start with those foundation models, but then what our team does is they build all of the follow-on models to solve the really tricky problems for accounting. We've got 24 models now that we've deployed just for reading and coding invoices. We've got a couple models that do nothing but identify who the vendor is. We've got models for understanding the structure of the line items, models to find hard-to-find values, like, believe it or not, the total is really hard to find on an invoice. Off-the-shelf OCR is like 25 or 30% on that one. And then also, we've got to deal with tax and currencies outside of the US across the world, and so we need models to identify that. The other big part of this is that we're able to design models that are just for your business. So some of these models learn from the overall activity of the network, but when it comes to coding that invoice, we need a model that learns from your company, from the way you're set up, your chart of accounts, your dimensions, the way your team works. So we have 7 models that we deploy just for your team that do the tricky bits around the coding, which means that we've got tens of thousands of models now in production, most of which are designed for individual customers. So the result of all of that is that we now get 100% accuracy on the invoices we process for about 68% of the invoices that flow through the system. I want to talk about one of the inventions that we're really proud about. David Dixon mentioned this other day, and this is our digital fingerprinting technology. And so this is one of the patents that we filed in the last couple of years. Essentially what it enables us to do is, once we've seen enough instances of the same vendor across the Sage network, we can develop a digital fingerprint for it that allows us to now achieve much higher degrees of accuracy when we scan that invoice. Now, over the couple of years since we launched AP automation across the world, we've now tracked 60 million relationships. And for 40,000 of the unique vendors in the Sage network, we've been able to now create these digital fingerprints, leading to close to 98% accuracy when we see one of those vendors. So the key here is, as soon as we see at least 3 customers use the same vendor, we can create this digital fingerprint. And so the message to you is, tell your friends. Because if you've got 2 and you need 3, maybe that next customer that signs up for AP automation is going to be the 3rd that enables that digital fingerprint. So moving on to continuous assurance. The message here is really, really simple. It doesn't do any good to have real-time data if it's not trusted. And so we make an equal investment in technology that assures the trust of the data flowing through the system. And just like continuous accounting, we break that down into 3 additional areas. Detect, where we have technology that monitors what's happening in the business to find exceptions and anomalies that need human review. Reconcile, technology that connects ledgers across your ecosystem to your banks and your vendors to continuously reconcile the ledgers between these businesses. And review. So once we have the doers turned into reviewers, we've got the technology to help those reviewers make better decisions. And so this is where Sage Network can play a really powerful part of this whole innovation story. If you think about how you onboard vendors today, it's a really crappy process. You're composing an email, you're sending a PDF form out to a vendor, you're probably chasing the vendor to finish that. You've got somebody trying to buy something in your company harassing you to get that vendor in the system so they can create a purchase order. You're manually doing a bunch of data entry. Often you're making mistakes, and those mistakes are costly. It can lead to compliance issues. It can open the doors to fraud if you've got the wrong information about that vendor. So there's a better way with the Sage Network. With the Sage Network, when you go to onboard that vendor, we'll automate the process for you. So we'll send out the email, we'll do the follow-up, we'll notify you when we've got the information. But the best part is that if we already have that vendor on the network, it's simply a matter of saying, yep, that's my vendor, add it to the network. And now you've got all of that data in an accurate way, but more important, we've now connected you to that vendor so we can reconcile your ledgers. Right, so you will always know in the relationship between you and your vendor if there's any discrepancies in the reconciliation. So going back to this digital fingerprinting, it's got great application for automating data entry. It's also got great application for detecting fraud. Now, we haven't released any of these services yet, but we've been building a number of AI services that are running on the network that we're using to experiment to find out, can we raise some flags when we see things? And we're looking at things like, if this vendor claims to be from Acme Incorporated, and we've got an Acme Incorporated fingerprint, do the fingerprints match? We've collected information about their payment details, their contact information. Do those match? Do they seem a bit odd? Did it come from an email address that we know about? Right, so that same technology can be applied on the assurance side as well, and this is how we're pairing those investments. PO line matching, or PO matching, we talked about this yesterday. This is another scenario where I challenged the team. Why do we have to use AI? Why are we not just using rules? I know that's weird for a CTO to say, why are we using AI? We shouldn't be using AI. But the reality is, when you talk to the accountants that are doing PO matching, there's like an infinite number of things that they do across the different humans that do this. There's so many things that can be different that make it hard to match, and you need sort of the human instinct to do the matching. And so we have built those AI models that enable that. And this gets back to what I talked about with continuous assurance, where review and PO line matching is a huge part of review, comes into play. So we want to put AI into every product. We're super, super energized about it. We've been working on it for years. And I want to give you some reasons why we're so confident about that. So the first is that Steve gave me a lot of flexibility and a pretty good budget, thank you, Steve, about 5 years ago to build the team. And we went out recruiting this team with the same vision that I showed you. And it turns out, surprisingly to me, that accounting's pretty sexy to data scientists. They love how structured the data is. They love that the data has already gone through some controls, so it's trusted. And they love the idea that there's real problems they can solve. So we've built a big team. We've got close to 20 PhD data scientists now that have done a bunch of patents. And they're just really doing amazing things. But we've also built this great machine learning team that's building this great infrastructure to allow us to build those thousands of models. So the second reason is we're pretty smart about how we spend our money. We're not going out there and using our precious resources to build giant foundation models. That's a waste of time. We're building those small models that find the total on an invoice. We're building the models that help us to find out when a debit should be a credit. No, none of the big players are going to build that stuff, but when it comes to accounting, that's critical. And the third is we've been doing this for a while. We started that team back in 2018 actually. We've had AI in our products since not that long afterwards. And today, we're doing millions of AI predictions every single day. And as I said, we're managing tens of thousands of models in production. So if you go back to the early days of Intact, one of the things that we had to do was think differently about how we ship software. So back in I'm kind of embarrassed to admit, back in 2000, when we founded Intact, our big challenge was how do we ship software every week when today's accounting vendors are shipping software every 18 months? And how do we ship software in such a way that every customer gets the same version automatically and they don't have to do anything? That sounds normal to us today. At the time, that was really, really different. And so we had to invest in this massive infrastructure to enable us to scale up while doing these releases every day and keeping every customer on the same version. And those investments led to a lot of innovation. We wouldn't have custom dimensions in the product if we hadn't, in the early days, made those investments in this infrastructure. So if you fast forward to today in the world of AI, we've got a similar challenge. When we built outlier detection for the general ledger, I told the AI team, it's not good enough that we train the models once a week. The models need to be trained continuously. It's not good enough that we deploy a model that works for everybody. We've got to deploy models for each customer that learn from the way they're set up and that evolve with them as their businesses evolve. And that led to the creation of the infrastructure that we now use behind the scenes to do all of that machine learning. So I call it an AI factory. And fundamentally, what an AI factory is something that we can deploy to a customer, to the network, that is pre-built with all of the trust requirements in place. It's pre-built with all the automation requirements in place. It's got capabilities to do hallucination detection, model drift detection. It automates our quality assurance checks. It automates our process control checks like ISO 27001. But critically, it enables us to deploy these into a customer or into the network. When we deploy it into the network, massive accuracy improvements for things like reading data off of an invoice, determining a document type. When we deploy it into a customer, massive improvements in accuracy for things like coding a journal entry or doing outlier detection. Now, all of this depends on your trust of AI. It's the number one thing that comes back to us when we do research on customer adoption of AI, that the biggest barrier is trust. There's the ethical concerns, there's concerns about data privacy, data security. The biggest concern is, do I, as an accountant who has to be trusted in my business, trust this AI to do the job safely and competently? Because if it doesn't do it competently, I'm not going to use it, right? Because I'll lose my trust. And this is super, super important to us. And it's actually what enables us to build these capabilities. So what are we doing to keep your trust there? So 4 things. One of them I've already talked about. It's equally important to us that we invest in AI that automates as it is investing in AI that does assurance. I've talked about our AI factory that has all these pre-built mechanisms for automating the security checks, the quality checks, the hallucination detection, everything that we do to upgrade the level of trust in our models. I've talked about the research that we do. Now, if you look at all those data scientists, they're spending most of their time doing research on how to prevent and detect hallucinations. That's where most of the patent applications have come in the last year. And then lastly, I don't expect you to take my words for it. We've got to make commitments to you, and we've got to make those commitments public. So we have published our data and AI ethical principles. You can scan that QR code and go to the Trust and Security Hub where we've published this. But these are the rules that we abide by. These are the rules that guide our behavior and our decisions in the way that we build AI. We talked about big partnerships that we have with AWS and with Microsoft. Those are critical to helping us to go fast. But we're also really keen to work on the future of tech. It's important that as we make investments in AI, that our customers and our communities know that we're thinking beyond just the commercial impact. So we've done a partnership with Teens in AI, which is one of my favorite organizations. Teens in AI goes around the world to communities where there's teenage girls that are just underserved in education or digital access. They bring teachers, they train them on AI, and they do hackathons. And I get to judge these hackathons regularly, and they're just so inspiring, the stuff that they're doing and they're working on. We've got our partnership with Morehouse College in Atlanta. We don't have enough racial diversity in AI. And our investment in our partnership with Morehouse College is enabling us to get into the curriculum level, help them with their AI curriculum, their Gen AI curriculum. We build internship programs for them. But fundamentally, we want to make it an incredible experience for the young men at Morehouse to get that AI education. I've talked over the years about how as we do more with technology, us as technology vendors, we've got to take on more responsibility. Now, the way that translates to our partners and the way that I talked to them yesterday is the markets get bigger and you can make more money. For you, what that means is we can focus not just on helping your businesses to run better, but also on helping you to achieve your purpose. And so when I walk around at the conference and I get a little bit of chills sometime thinking about what we've done over the last 24 years, believe it or not, what gives me the most satisfaction is seeing what some of these great nonprofits are doing. And so what I want to do now is show you a video of a great organization in Atlanta called Operation Hope.
Sage Intacct and the AI power platforms are really bringing sexy back to accounting.
Operation Hope is the largest nonprofit in the U.S. that focuses on financial literacy and financial empowerment. There is a huge problem with financial literacy in the U.S.
Really being able to educate people on what those things are, how to benefit yourself with them, how to create a budget, how to stick to a budget, how to be smarter with your money.
We raise an individual, the whole boat rises. We really think it helps the whole U.S. economy.
We were fortunate enough to be an early adopter for the AI platforms with Sage Intacct, the first one being AP automation.
We jumped on it as soon as we could. It's a very smooth transition. It was so simple.
Now I can just email a bill directly into Sage Intacct. It reads directly what's on the bill.
AI, it's not there to replace you, it's there to help you.
The whole process is just, it's quicker, it's easier, especially being on 2 different coasts of the US. The entire process is just sped up. I don't have to wait for a West Coast person to wake up. We also use the geo outlier detector. The biggest benefit of that one is it just catches mistakes. It makes everybody look better. It makes data entry easier. It makes review easier. It's like having an assistant, a little personal assistant helping you make journal entries because it caught all those things in the beginning. It helps get time back.
We're able to drill down to a deeper level to be able to provide more reliable and accurate information to those who need it.
It helps our team do everything that they've been doing just faster and smarter.
So please help me welcome Michael Smith, the Senior Vice President of Accounting and Finance for Operation Hope, up to the stage. Mike.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wait. Okay. Full disclosure, they offered seats so that this wouldn't happen, and I said no.
He didn't. He manned up. He said, no, I got it. I'm going to own it. I'm going to own it.
So let's start with what I just mentioned. How is Operation Hope using technology to further your purpose, to go faster with what you want to achieve at your foundation?
Yeah, so just like I said in the video, just like you said a second ago, Sage Intacct really is helping bring sexy back to accounting. So most people, not the people in this room, obviously, when you hear accountant, they think of some person, some guy hunched over a 10 key in some dark corner. But that's not the case here. Sage Intacct really helps us be modern and be cutting edge. It helps us not be tied to a desk, not be tied to a time zone. It helps us collaborate internationally. So for example, and not to poach any employees, but we're hiring a senior accountant right now. And because of the because of the cloud-based platform of Sage Intacct, that person can sit anywhere and still help drive the mission and drive the purpose of Operation Hope.
That's awesome. So I mentioned earlier that in our research, trust is the biggest barrier to overcome in adopting AI. Surely you had to go through that cycle. So what did you do? What was the experience, and how have you overcome that barrier?
Oh, for sure. First, I do want to congratulate you on that QR code. I hope everybody scanned it. I definitely did. So Operation Hope, we're in a kind of unique space where our board is crazy. One person that's on one of our boards is Sam Altman, the founder and creator of OpenAI and ChatGPT. He's partnered with us to start the AI Ethics Council. And so what that is, it's kind of like the Bill of Rights or the Constitution or the 10 Commandments of what AI will be allowed to do. Kind of put those limitations and definitions on it so it doesn't turn into the Terminator movie, which I'm sure we're all kind of in the back of our mind thinking about. So the good part about that is we've had the opportunity to have behind-the-scene conversations with Sam and really understand what AI is, what AI does, what it's going to do, and how you can use it. I know for me, when they announced Copilot yesterday, the first thing I thought is, this is like a personal assistant for me. And for me, personal assistant is not scary. I'm going to use it and I'm going to love it, so I can't wait till it rolls out.
Awesome. So last question. It gets personal when you talk about accounting and how hard sometimes things like the close are and getting through audits. So it's personal. So how has this impacted you personally?
So a personal question. I like it. I like it. So to answer this, I kind of have to give a personal and vulnerable answer. So I'm a single father with full custody of 2 daughters. So one of the biggest things for me is how do I get time back to be a dad? I'm sure people in the same situation feel like you either burn the candle at both ends or just stretch thin, right? So it's really helpful for me to be able to, whether it's email a bill over and let AP automation handle it, or take some huge allocation entry and upload it or import it and let GL Outlier Detector review it for me and say, hey, something's not right, double check this, look at this. Just being able to get time back with that. And then when you just mentioned shortening the close and eliminating the close, like those things, it's gonna give me so much time back to just try to be a fantastic father. And I thank you for it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Appreciate it.
So what are we doing with generative AI to make everything better? There's really 2 simple things. Generative AI enables us to reach everybody else in the company with accounting, right? So that people like me don't have to log into an accounting product to approve a purchase order. Or people like me don't have to log into accounting to find out if I have enough budget to hire my next headcount. This is huge. It's going to reduce a lot of the burden on your team, but it's also going to speed up the workflows that depend on other employees. The second thing we're doing is the real magic behind large language models is we're taking their understanding, their ability to write code, to understand complex instructions, and we're giving AI the ability to not just do simple tasks, but to own entire workflows. So I don't expect you to trust me. I hope you do. I showed you some Latin earlier about the close from Pacioli in the 1494 text that he wrote. So I decided, just for proof, that I would ask ChatGPT to translate the Latin for you. Now, if you can't read this, the translation is, closing the month is worse than the rack, but it's all that we have until we get better technology. So the better technology has arrived, and that's Sage Copilot. You all were thinking I wasn't going to do a demo. So I'm going to take you through a number of scenarios and things we're working on with Copilot for Intact. And hopefully you'll see throughout how it addresses continuous accounting, assurance, and insights. So let's first delve into continuous accounting. So imagine that your AP clerk logs into Intact, and they've got a nudge from Sage Copilot. Copilot's been working behind the scenes while the AP clerk has been away. And Copilot wants the human to come in and review what Copilot's been doing. And so in this case, Copilot's processed 15 invoices. And the AP clerk can take a look at the invoices that were processed, can take a look at the details if they want, or if they have the confidence that Copilot's giving them, they can simply approve. But also, Copilot is chasing other employees to get the approvals that they need to move invoices through the processing process. And so here you can see that Copilot's reached out to a number of employees to get them to approve. It's gone on to create purchase requests for invoices that are ready to pay. And of course, it'll give you a list of the payment requisitions it's created and give you that opportunity to review them before they're approved. The real power comes in when Copilot detects something that requires a human to do some review. So in this case, an invoice has arrived from SA Art Info, I think that is, for an amount that's outside the bounds of what they normally get from this vendor. And so Copilot is offering to help the accountants to review that invoice. So we click Review, we go to the invoice, the accountant takes a look, and what the accountant's going to do here is say, you know what, I need somebody in marketing who's did this purchase to take a look at this and confirm that that amount is okay. And here Copilot's saying, yep, I'll do that. Now they're on vacation today, so I'll get to them tomorrow. And they know that from Sage HR, by the way. So this one's a little tricky and courageous. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that AI is perfect, makes 100% accurate predictions. If AI shows any hint of not being perfectly confident, we need a human to get involved. So in this case, Copilot is saying, you know, I got this invoice, not sure I coded it correctly, I couldn't see the total, it was smudged. So I need a human to come in and take a look at this invoice, look at what I did, review it, make changes if you need to. So we're making the changes here. We're going to go ahead and save it. Now remember what I told you about our AI factory, how this feedback now gets into the loop and is now included in the next training run, so the models are going to get more accurate the next time. So that's automation. So what about, thank you. So what about chasing employees? So you're trying to get the month closed. You need to know how much to accrue on a purchase order. And so you're reaching out to somebody in marketing to say, hey, are we going to get invoiced for the rest of this PO this month? So actually, Copilot's going to go out to teams to find that marketing person because we don't want them to have to log into Intact. This is the best way to reach them. And Copilot's going to provide some assistance to the marketing lead here. Hey, here's the last invoices. I actually think, based on the history, you should go ahead and accrue the remainder of the purchase order. And the marketing person, given that information, can just say, yep, please go ahead and accrue that much. Simple, but a heck of a lot easier for that marketing person than in the old way of doing this. What about getting timesheets in on time? That's a burden for a lot of people in this room, always chasing employees to submit their timesheet. Well, we already have AI that can do the timesheet for you, right? That's in Sage Intelligent Time. But how about getting the employee to just review that and say, yep, it's okay, I approve? Well, in this case, Copilot is nudging that employee, taking them into Sage Intelligent Time, and actually verifying something. I don't see any billable time Friday afternoon. Now, I went into Sage HR, and I can see you took time off Friday afternoon. Can you just confirm so I know we're not missing some billing? And of course, the consultant who's got the billable time can simply confirm that. And then Copilot is going to ask for an approval. And that's going to get submitted to the finance team so it can be billed. All done. So now, what about chasing customers and vendors when you need them to get things done? So this is a really powerful example of what we can do in the Sage network. So now imagine that you've sent a digital invoice, an e-invoice, to one of your customers. It's a large invoice. It's going to affect cash flow if you don't get it paid on time. Since it was delivered in the network, we know the status of that invoice over at our customer. And Copilot has picked up on the fact that this invoice hasn't actually been accepted yet by that customer. And it's suggesting, hey, maybe we need to reach out here because this is going to affect cash flow, and it's offering to write that email to the customer. It's going to do that Dunning's letter for you. Now, you can review it. You can save that as a template for future emails if you want. But Copilot's doing that work for you. Okay, so some of you may have noticed that I only talked about continuous accounting and continuous assurance. The purpose of those two investments are to get your data real time and to get them trusted. So what can we do now if we have real-time trusted data? I want to take you back to what David showed you yesterday with our cash flow forecasting capability. So this is amazing AI that helps us to look into the future to predict when customers are going to pay and then to build that into a cash flow forecast. This is great technology. Imagine this in the hands of Copilot that can look at this every 5 minutes. It can look at it continuously. And if it detects that something's changed in the forecast, it can reach out to the CFO, who probably is in Teams, and say to that CFO, hey, I just realized the cash flow forecast change. This is good news. You got more money. You're going to have more money than you thought. So let's talk about what we do with that. And so we give the ability to the CFO to click that link that takes them into Sage Planning, Sage Intacct Planning, where we can now start to model out what to do with this cash. And so the CFO is asking Copilot, what are some options that I can do with this? And this is just back and forth. It's kind of helping the CFO get to some answers. Well, one of those suggestions is, hey, you've been doing a really good job with sales and marketing. It's super efficient. Put the money in there, and it's going to drive future revenue. And so the CFO wants to model that, and Copilot is helping. So clicking that link there, we're actually going to go into the model page for the revenue forecast and the sales forecast. And Copilot is showing to the CFO, here's how your related forecasts changed based on an assumption that we're putting this money into marketing. Here's how your expense ramps, here's how your revenue following that ramps up, and here's the impact on your margin. Now, Copilot's going to give a couple of other examples. In this business, there's an opportunity to pay off a loan earlier. There's implications to that. There's an opportunity to make a capital investment earlier. We know about those capital investments because they're in Sage planning. And ultimately, what the Copilot's going to do, as Mike said, as the personal assistant, is going to take the advice there, put it into a PowerPoint, and enable the CFO to deliver that to the team, and they can make a human decision about it. So hopefully, what you've seen through the demo of Copilot and all the other things I talked about today, just how serious we are about eliminating the close through continuous accounting, continuous assurance, and continuous insights. Thank you, everybody.